You'll know you're having success in practicing meditation is it will become more and more evident to you while you're practicing that there's no time. Because time doesn't exist without thinking. And so if you're succeeding in spending time away from thinking, there's no time there. There's no time there. All there is now. So that's one way, for me, that was a distinctive difference. That it's also related to the easiness of the practice. There's no time, and it's easy. It's like that. And that's dramatically different than it is for people who are just starting to meditate. But I want to say that because I want you to know that it doesn't stay that way. If you practice meditation and if you're understanding the practice, which is important, and you do it with the kind of consistency and the kind of commitment that it takes to establish a practice, and especially if you begin to expand that formal practice into an informal practice, that this reality of your natural state starts to reveal itself. There starts to be less going on when you're meditating, more spaciousness, more stillness, more quiet. And yet, with that being the case, you're alert at the same time. And one of the things that is part of practicing is the time will come for many people where falling asleep will be a problem, right? So that's just a phase of practice. When you go through that, you have to understand that you now have to bring yourself back when you start to go down as far as going to sleep is concerned. So you practice staying awake. For other people, the practice will be one in which their mind's racing and they're anxious and they're restless the whole time. Again, as time passes and you practice these things, you want to focus on relaxing the body and just letting go, and that'll start to drop. And when that drops, and when you're still alert but you're not asleep, you find that middle place, the Buddha called the middle way. Right? You're awake and alert and completely relaxed. So there's a new teacher on the horizon, and I like this guy for a lot of reasons, and so I thought I'd introduce you. So this guy that I came across, he's interesting in a lot of different ways. There's a lot of new teachers that are coming out these days. And not only that, but there's a lot of teachers who are coming out that are less and less talking the religious or the Eastern words and language and concepts and mysticism and magical and right. There are teachers now who are leaving that more and more behind because they want to communicate about what this is in a way that is free from that, because it really doesn't require that. This is not, the truth is not Eastern. The truth is not a religion. The truth is not Buddhist, right? And it can get confusing for people because people tend to latch on to identifications. They latch on to the identity of this, just like you latch on to the identity of you. But this has no identity. This has no identity. Although it's spoken of in those terms often because that's where it originated from, that's the traditions it came from, right? It is none of that. It is none of that. It's nothing. It's not conceptual. It's not Buddhist, right? And one of the things that I like about some of the newer teachers is they're trying to keep the focus there. And they're trying to say, look, what this is about your natural experience of yourself. This is about what it's like to be you, what it's like to naturally be you. And what they're saying is the natural experience that is available to anyone who pursues it, right, to experience this natural state is experiencing what's there without thought. Experiencing that the awareness, the natural state, the awareness is not a thinking thing. It's not a thought process. It's just an awareness. It's just a presence. It's just what's here. And it is free from suffering, right? That's the focus, right? It is free from suffering. It is free from confusion. It's a natural sense of peace, right? So this guy's name is, I'll show you the...
Is that natural state the same for all of us?
Yes. Yeah. Yeah, it is non-dual. And it is who we are, not just who you are. It's who we are. It's what's true. It's the truth about reality. The truth about reality is that we are reality. Consciousness is reality. You are that. I am that. That's all there is, right? Ultimately, if you pursue this, eventually it gets to be evident to you that if you take you out of the picture, right, because you're the separate one, aren't you? You're separate from the world and other people, right? Right? But if that you is seen, if the truth about that you is seen, which is it doesn't actually exist, right? If that's actually seen and that's gotten in the heart center, right? That you will disappear. And when that you disappears, there's no separation. There's no one separate from what is. All there is what is. So this is what this fellow's book looks like. It's a brand new book that's out, right? His name is Angelo Di Lillo, MD. And he's an anesthesiologist, which is interesting. His job is to put people to sleep, and when he gets home, he helps people wake up. Nice, right? So he has this book out, and he knows what he's doing, because I've never seen somebody hit YouTube so fast and all over the place. Yeah. He's done these 10, 12, 15-minute segments, and he's got a studio in his house, so he puts these, you can put these screens behind you that show different things, right? So he's got tons of them on YouTube, and each one is specific. When did meditation become nothing for me? Something like that. Each of them. And then he also had done a retreat online that I discovered, which the retreat is online. And he was that was about a year ago, so he was still relatively new then. So you can see the retreat online. It was a Zoom retreat because it was during the pandemic. And there was only about maybe 8 or 9 people there, right? But he did it for 2 days. He did 4 major talks during the retreat. And if you listen to this guy, you'll know what I mean when I say he's different. He talks very much regular talk. You know what I mean? There's not a lot of Sanskrit words in there, But even though that's the case, he is familiar with all that. I can tell because I've listened to him, and he'll drop a name here and there. He'll drop Ramana Maharshi's name. He likes Eckhart Tolle. So he knows the players, he studied it. He said he's had a Zen teacher, so he's studied Zen and so forth. He's familiar with a lot of stuff. So.
Are you going to send that to us? That guy's name?
Yeah, I can send that out. Yeah, I will send it out. And then the book itself, this book was written, he woke up, he said it was about 15 years ago. And he didn't tell anybody, because he didn't know how to talk about it. And he figured people would think he was nuts, right? But then gradually started to talk to some friends, and the friends started to tell him that they were waking up from the conversations that he was having with them. And so he thought, well, okay, well then if I have something to offer people, I shouldn't hold it back. And so he started to talk to more people, and more people started telling him that they were waking up around him. And then he wrote this book, and the book was written for somebody who maybe didn't even ever hear about this, So there's an introduction. It's called Awake, It's Your Turn, based on the idea that anybody can awaken. And then the book was written in such a way that it can kind of walk anybody through this whole reality of waking up. For example, the chapters are first steps, what is awakening, attention, resources, teachers, practices, and techniques. Okay, so it's very fundamental stuff. Good, basic, useful information for anybody that is interested in this process of awakening. And then he mentioned that he's going to have another book coming out for people who have experienced awakening, and then what after that, what the process is after that. So there's one thing in here where he's talking about practices and techniques that I really like. And the other thing I like about the way he teaches is he tells you all of the stuff. You can pick what works for you, right? But for example, with meditation, he goes over all the different forms of meditation and says, find what works for you. Because you have to understand something. All these techniques and practices like meditation, right? And moving meditations and so forth, the misunderstanding about them is that practice is going to take you somewhere, and then you become concerned about, well, what practice should it be? What would the right practice be? What would the best practice be to take me somewhere? But that's not what the practices are. The practices are to practice coming out of your preoccupation with thinking. You're already, remember, you're not going anywhere. This is the big problem, right, with this whole process, is the mind wants to keep you thinking you're going somewhere. The mind wants to keep you thinking you're not there yet, but don't worry, don't worry. Practice harder, read more, you know what I mean? You'll get there someday. The mind will run it by you that way, and so that's the way you'll think about it, right? But it's misleading, right? Because the truth of the matter is, you were always there. You can't, how could you have to get somewhere? How could you have to get somewhere that you can't get out of? You see what I'm saying? You can't not be aware. You can't not be what you are. You can't stop being what you are, let alone not be that and try and become it, okay? So that's more the way it is. And then when you look at the practices, you can understand the practices are to help me practice paying attention, right? So I can stop being preoccupied with where my attention is, right? That is a distraction from the natural state. That's all. That's what this is.
Sounds like it's almost like a freeing experience.
It is. Yeah, it is, because the prison that most people are in is a very active, torturing, suffering process, right? Yeah. One of the things he said about his waking, he said that all of his life, up until he was 24, which is when he woke up, he said life was very difficult. Life was uncomfortable. He wasn't happy. He was suffering, and he was aware of it. He didn't understand necessarily why or what was going on. And I could relate to that, right? Because I had a difficult childhood, so that was already suffering, right? And then as I got older and became a teenager and a young adult, I became more aware of the fact that even though I wasn't still in that family, in that house, right, I was still suffering, right? So there was something that had happened in the process of my developmental reality, right, of my process of my conditioning that left me in a state in which life was hard, life was hard.
You said he woke up when he was 24.
Yeah.
So that was before he was in anesthesiology.
Yeah. Or around, I don't know the timing, what it was. But I wanted to just share one thing. He talks about specific techniques in the book, meditation practices, mindful practices, inquiry practices. He goes a lot of detail into self-inquiry and explains why that's a very powerful process to use, right? And then movement-based practices like Tai Chi Cha. So, and then he goes into the details about those particular practices, and then he comes to one practice that I really like the way he talks about it, and he calls it anytime practice. It's what I call informal practice. And it's what I was saying recently is very, very important, to move from just formal practice, limited amount of time, to start to have the practice become more and more consistent. Here's how he describes anytime practice. I'm going to paint this practice with broad brushstrokes. The reason for this is simple. What we are practicing here is a new way of living. That's important. You're practicing a new way of living, and so you should practice it all the time at some point, you see? A new way of being is another way of saying the same thing. So what we're practicing here is a new way of living, and I can't tell you how that will look. I only know that it's possible for you. I want to empower you to develop compassion, acceptance, and a love-based way of moving through life. One that harmonizes with your personality and innermost promptings. In short, I want to offer a possibility that you, in the life you are living exactly as it is now, will feel more natural, spontaneous, and fulfilled when you awaken your innate capacity for authenticity, acceptance, and altruism. Authenticity means your capacity to be real, okay? And when you're being a personality, you're not being real, because the personality is not real. I encourage you to try them and see how they feel. See if you don't find powerful effects coming about from moving in these ways. Then I hope you will modify and evolve these approaches in ways that make them fit your personality. So here's some of these anytime practices, right? And I've actually talked about this myself. I didn't call it an anytime practice, but I've mentioned here, if you're out in public, in a public place, and you start paying attention to your mind, you'll see how crazy your mind is, right? He says here, as you see someone approaching, immediately smile, regardless of whether or not you know them. It doesn't matter if you are simply walking past them or are about to enter into a conversation with them. Just feel that smile of acceptance. This isn't a taking smile, like an attempt to get acceptance from them. It's a giving smile that says, I already like you.
Yeah.
I'm human just like you are, and I accept you. You can even say these words internally to remind yourself, even if you're too shy to make eye contact. When you smile with your body and heart, they will feel it. That's a practice. Right? Because you're practicing a way of being. You're practicing how you're being with people. And you could say that that practice is a way of expressing unconditional love, which is your true nature. Another one. When you are in nature, you can apply the solitary compassion-based meditation described above to the environment itself. Go through the steps, and then once you feel that your contact in your own sensations, the contact with your own sensations, begin to apply that acceptance, regard, and simple enjoyment of sensory contact to the sky, the trees, a rock, or the smell of the environment. So here he's just talking about when you're out in nature, right? Just allow yourself to relax and be present. And just enjoy what's there,
The peace pilgrim did that when she was walking in
Yes, sure, of course.
nature.
Sure. Another one, when you are in a conversation, this is one I like. When you're in a conversation with someone and notice the internal dialogue. How am I coming across? Do they like me? I don't know what to say. I'm anxious. This is a good time to turn some attention to the sensations in the body. When you do that, you remind yourself of the acceptance and love that is intrinsic to that contact. Once you can do this, it may take some practice. You can then take the next step. The next step is to apply that contact you feel with your own sensations to the sense, feel of the other person, their body and their presence. Feel the warmth, acceptance, and love in that sense of presence of another. Once you have this down, see if you can find where the sensation in you and the sensation of their presence meet. Remember, this is about feel, not visualizing. If you are one of the many people out there who have severe social anxiety and find this too difficult to practice in live, spontaneous conversations, then consider practicing this with a friend who is easy to talk to. Better yet, practice with someone who wants to work on this along with you. This kind of practice can be challenging initially if you have social anxiety, but the rewards are endless if you keep at it. So, there's a variety of different ways that he talks about practicing in this book. And the thing I like about it is that it's coming from a place of understanding that the practice is not to get somewhere. The practice is to notice where you already are, like that. So, I'll send an email out to this guy's name and his book, but
That was all coming from the book Awake?
yes, yeah, I was reading from the book Awake. But you see, the thing is this, the reason that I think this is good is because, and the reason I think it's good to listen to a variety of different teachers who are talking different ways, and to listen to the brain science, and to listen to the traditional approach of these things. So you can start to get a sense of what it is outside of all that, your own personal understanding, your own personal direct experience of what this is referring to, because it's referring to something that is realer than your personality. It's referring to something that is realer than anything else. Right? There's nothing realer than you. That's why we use the word authentic, right? You're authentic, you're real, you're being yourself, right? When you're being a personality, that's inauthentic, right? That's one of the reasons why being a personality is such a job. Do you know what I mean? Because you have a sense that it's not real. You feel fake. Did you ever experience that? I did, especially when you're a teenager. You know you don't know what the hell you're doing, right? And you feel very fake, right? And so you try and take on more ways of identification. You join a fraternity, join a sorority.
Tribalism.
Yeah, tribalism. How you dress, right? These are all ways to try and stay calm and relax and not be so anxious about, how inauthentic you actually are. Right? And without understanding why that's the case, it can become a real problem. You may end up taking medication, right? Because you're so ill at ease with yourself. You're so ill at ease with what it's like to be you, and you just don't feel real, and you don't feel authentic, and you don't feel that you have a good sense of yourself. How could you? How could you? Because if you're aware of the fact that you're so unstable as a personality, right? When you lose your temper, you behave in ways you don't like yourself, right? So how could you? So I heard somebody say the other day, don't worry about me trying to control you. I have a lot of trouble controlling myself. I thought that was a very insightful statement, So what this is about is discovering that you don't need to control yourself when you discover your true nature. Your true nature is naturally loving, naturally compassionate, naturally present, naturally interested in other people, other human beings, because your true nature knows that you and them are the same thing. You and them are the same thing. Because the truth is the truth, and once you get involved with it and you're impassioned by it, it's like you just can't help yourself. You can't help yourself. How could you help yourself? How could you not want this? And that's one of the things that this doctor says that's important to understand. He said, if you get this, if you get the bug, if you get the bug, you can't help it. You can't help it. And if you really get the bug and you really understand what this is, this will be the most important thing in your life. As it should be. As it should be. Why shouldn't it be the most important thing in your life when what this offers you is the end of suffering, natural happiness, right? Better health, better relationships. You can't get a better package anywhere, right? Okay.
And there's no turning back.
That's right. You can't undo waking up. You can't undo it, You can't even undo the beginning of the process where the lights go on a little bit, not totally, right? But you get a glimpse, right? That's it. You got the virus. All right, see you later.